Now we are going to check another question. The question is explain with the aid of a diagram. Okay. What changes will alter the amount of consumer surplus available from the consumption of good? Okay. So it's a market question. So let's check how to answer this particular question. Okay. So the question is about change in consumer surplus, right? So first we have to understand what do you mean by consumer surplus. So basically, consumer surplus is a difference, right? There's a difference between what a consumer are willing to pay and what they actually pay, right? So that is what we meant by consumer surplus. So let's see that I am willing to pay. Okay, I just wanted to buy a chocolate and I'm willing to pay around 50 rupees. Okay, or $50, whatever it is. And the chocolate actually cost me around 30 rupees. Okay, so I have 20 rupees as my consumer surplus here. Okay, that is what the consumer surplus. Okay, so basically when you check the diagram, you can see here, this is the equilibrium price. P is the equilibrium price, right? So I'm willing to pay for a maximum of rupees till A, that till the point A. But what I'm actually paying, P. So this will be my consumer surplus. Okay. So it is a difference between what consumers are willing to pay and what they actually pay. Okay. Is it clear? Now we have to understand how these changes are occurring. Okay. How these changes are occurring. So let's see how they changes in the consumer surplus. So there are a lot of reasons that could bring a change in consumer surplus. So let's check one by one. Change in the price. Okay. So if price falls, consumer surplus increases. And if price rises, consumer surplus decreases. That's for sure, right? For just example, let's take this graph. Okay. So here you can see here, this is the initial equilibrium, right? This is the initial equilibrium and this is the price. So just imagine that the new price is increased. Okay. Now we have a new price here. So what is the new consumer surplus here? This part will be the new consumer surplus. So we have reduced, right? This much surplus, we have lost this much surplus, correct? And what if at the same time, if the surplus is like if the price is reduced, what will happen? So just imagine that this is the new price. Okay. So this is the new price. So if the price increases to this point, what is the demand? The demand will be only this much. Okay. Quantity demand will be this much only. And the supply will be this much. Okay. Since the price is higher than the equilibrium price, the quantity demanded will reduce and there will be some surplus. Right. The product will remain unsold. The complete product won't be sold in the market. And that is why the consumer surplus will decrease. And now let's check what will happen when the price is reduced. Okay. So let's take this as 1 and this is as 8. So when the price is reduced below the equilibrium price, what will happen? Now the people are willing to buy this much. Okay. They are willing to buy this much. Okay. So they are willing to buy this much. Okay. And what is the available quantity at this price? Only this much. Okay. So only this much quantity will be sold. So what will be the consumer surplus here? What will be the consumer surplus? This much quantity is sold, right? So the consumer surplus will change just like this. Okay. This will be the consumer surplus. Clear? So this is how the consumer surplus will change when the price is changed. Okay. So as you can see here, when the price falls, right? When the price is falls, consumer surplus increases. So it increases this much, right? So initially it was just this much, and now it is like this much. Okay. And if price rises, as price increases, the consumer surplus decreases. So this is shown by the movement along the demand curve. See, changes along the demand curve. Okay. Now let's see the second reason, that is change in the demand. Okay. So what happens? You do like just take the case of like COVID time. Okay. So during the COVID time, there is a sudden increase in the demand for mask, sanitizers, hand wash, etc. Right? So at all price, people are willing to buy more. Right? So when such a situation occur, the demand will curve will shift. Right? Okay. So just take D1 as our initial demand curve. Okay. So the curve will shift to right, just like this. Okay, let's take it as D1. Okay. So the demand curve will shift right. As a result, what will happen? So initially, what was our consumer surplus? This was our initial consumer surplus. This point, right? This was our initial consumer surplus. Now the demand has increased, right? The demand has increased to this. So the new demand curve will make a equilibrium with the initial supply curve. So the new consumer surplus will be this much. Okay. So increase in demand, that is the curve will shift to right. The consumer surplus will increase. So there will be an increase in the consumer surplus. At the same time, when the demand is decreasing and the curve is shifted to left. Okay. So we can see the shift in left. So this is the decrease in demand due to any something happens or some due to some reasons. The entire demand has fallen here. Okay. So what happens to the consumer surplus? This is the new equilibrium made by demand curve D2 with the supply curve. So this will be this portion will be the consumer surplus. Okay, see solution. So there will be a decrease. So when the demand decreases, it will reduce the consumer surplus. When the demand increases, it will increase the consumer surplus. When the demand curve shifts to right. Okay. So let's take the next result. Change in the supply curve. So the consumer surplus can also be changed when the supply curve is also shifted, right? So let's see how they will act. So increase in supply. Okay, so when the supply is increased, so just imagine that this is our initial curve. Case one is our initial supply curve, and S2 is the increased one. Okay, so supply has increased, right? So what happens? So initially, what was our consumer surplus? We only have this much, right? This much. And now the new supply curve is right. So it has increased this much. Okay. And what if the supply curve is shifting to left side? So if the supply had shifted like this, let's take it as S3. So what will happen? The new equilibrium is here. So the consumer surplus will be this much. Okay. So this will be our new consumer surplus. So consumer surplus will decrease. So when the demand increases, consumer surplus increases. When the supply increases, consumer surplus increases. When the price decreases, consumer surplus also increases. So these are the first three reasons. So let's see the last one. That is the government intervention. So how does government intervention change consumer surplus? Let's see that. Okay. So the subsidy. So why subsidy? Subsidy is a payment made by government to the producers to improve the production and the consumption. Right. So as a result, what will happen? The subsidies will lower the price because subsidies are given to producers, right? So for example, just imagine that the product, okay, the product costs you around 100 rupees to buy one unit, okay. And when it is 100 rupees, only 10 units were sold out, okay. Now the government is providing subsidies, okay, so that the producers can reduce the cost up to 80 rupees. Now around 12 to 13 units are sold out. Okay, now the production has increased, the more products were consumed. Okay, and the government will be giving a subsidy that could cover the difference and also provide a better profit to them. So, for example, the government will be providing around 120 rupees. That is 40 rupees of subsidy. Okay, 40 rupees as subsidy. Okay, as a result, what will happen? The producers will have profit, consumers will also have more service. Okay, so both are getting benefit. Got it. And second thing is taxes. What is taxes? It increases the price, right? So it can reduce the consumer surplus. So subsidies can be used to promote the products that can be beneficial to the society. And taxes can be used to raise the price of the product which is non beneficial to the society, for example, alcohol, cigarettes, etc. Then government have a lot of price mechanism, right? Like what are the price mechanism? We have minimum price, maximum price, right? A lot are there. So let's see what's with the taxes. Okay. So when the tax is imposed, what will happen? It will shift the curve to left. Okay. So as a result, what is happening? Initial, this was the initial consumer surplus. Okay. But now it has reduced to this much. Okay. And this part will be the government's revenue, and this part will be the debt maintenance or the welfare. Okay. At the same time, if it is like subsidies are provided, what will happen? The price will fall down, right? So the price will shift to like the PS or something like that. Okay, let's take it as price change. So as a result, the supply curve will also shift right. Okay, this will be our new supply curve with the subsidy. Okay. And what will happen? The consumer surplus will increase. Okay. So now people will be able to buy more at a reduced price, and the differences will be covered by government. Okay. The government will provide the price. Okay. So that is how the subsidy is working. So it will provide more consumer surplus. That is how they encourage the consumption of that particular product. And so, how can we conclude it? So, basically, consumer surplus uh, are the changes due to changes due to prices, shift in demand, shift in supply, or government prices. Okay. And the minimum also, like the minimum price and the maximum price also work with that. Okay. So, the maximum price will be less than the equilibrium price. Okay. So, whenever you are drawing a maximum price, it should be always less than the equilibrium price, and the minimum price will always be greater than the equilibrium price. Okay, so just keep that in. So all these can shift the or make a change in the consumer surplus. So if we have like lower prices, higher demand, higher supply, and less taxes, more subsidies, and more less like more government intervention for increasing the consumption, it will increase the consumer surplus. Okay.